Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived in Ireland for an official visit, marking a significant diplomatic engagement between Kyiv and Dublin at a time when Ukraine continues to navigate the pressures of Russia's ongoing full-scale invasion. The visit is Zelensky's first official trip to Ireland since the conflict escalated, and it underscores the continued importance of strengthening political and humanitarian cooperation with European partners. The president arrived in Dublin accompanied by his wife, First Lady Olena Zelenska. Their arrival was recorded in a series of images released by AFP TV and AFP, documenting each step of the landing and initial reception at the airport. The Ukrainian presidential aircraft touched down in Dublin with a visible Ukrainian flag on its fuselage. As the plane approached its designated position, Irish Taoiseach Micheál Martin waited on the tarmac to formally receive the Ukrainian delegation. The footage shows tracking shots of the aircraft slowing to a halt, followed by mid-range images that capture the moment it arrived at the terminal area. The presence of Ireland's Prime Minister at the airport highlights the level of importance Dublin attaches to this visit, emphasising Ireland's ongoing support for Ukraine during the war. When the aircraft door opened, President Zelensky and First Lady Olena Zelenska stepped out and descended the stairway. They walked toward Micheál Martin, who awaited them for a brief reception formalities. The exchange captured on video shows Zelensky shaking hands with Martin before the First Lady also extended her greeting. This moment marked the beginning of the diplomatic engagement planned in Ireland and symbolised continued cooperation between the two governments. The visuals document close-up shots of the Ukrainian President and First Lady standing beside the Taoiseach, providing a clear view of the leaders as they greeted one another. Although no public remarks were made during this initial encounter, the interaction follows standard protocol in official state visits where formal speeches are reserved for later meetings or joint statements. The arrival served as a ceremonial opening to discussions expected to follow in the Irish capital. After the greeting, the Ukrainian delegation proceeded toward an awaiting vehicle. Footage shows Zelensky and his wife entering the car, followed by their motorcade departing the airport. The images reflect the transition from the airport arrival to the subsequent schedule of meetings and engagements planned during the visit. These events typically include talks with senior Irish officials, discussions on bilateral relations, review of humanitarian support programmes, and updates on Ukraine's current military and political situation. Ireland has consistently expressed strong support for Ukraine since the beginning of the war. Although Ireland maintains a policy of military neutrality, it has committed to various forms of assistance, including humanitarian aid, support for Ukrainian refugees, and backing for European Union sanctions against Russia. Dublin's position has remained firmly aligned with the wider EU response, emphasising solidarity with Ukraine and calling for respect for international law. Zelensky's visit forms part of a broader diplomatic effort aimed at reinforcing Ukraine's ties with European governments. His international trips often focus on securing long-term commitments for military, economic and humanitarian support. While the footage provided does not include details of the subsequent meetings or specific policy discussions, it is clear that the arrival represents another chapter in Ukraine's efforts to maintain close engagement with its partners. The presence of Olena Zelenska during the visit adds an additional dimension to the mission. As Ukraine's First Lady, she has been active in promoting humanitarian initiatives, advocating for mental health programs, coordinating support for displaced Ukrainian families, and engaging with international organizations to address the civilian impact of the war. Her participation in official visits often involves meetings focused on humanitarian conditions, reconstruction programs, and coordination with host countries to support Ukrainian communities living abroad. The arrival in Dublin is therefore not only a diplomatic protocol, but also a signal of broader cooperation areas, including humanitarian support, social initiatives, and cultural engagement. The Ukrainian community in Ireland has grown since the beginning of the conflict, with Dublin providing protection and assistance to refugees fleeing the war. Zelensky's visit is likely connected to ongoing discussions on how Ireland can continue to support both Ukraine directly and its citizens living temporarily in Irish communities. The video sequence documenting the arrival includes several different camera angles and shots. The tracking shots provide a continuous view of the aircraft as it lands and moves toward the reception area. These sequences give a sense of movement and protocol at the airport. The mid-range shots offer a balanced perspective, showing both the aircraft and the waiting delegation. The close-up shots focus on the facial expressions and gestures made as Zelensky and his wife greet Micheál Martin. The final tracking shots follow the presidential car as it drives away, marking the end of the airport segment of the visit. Although the footage does not provide audio content such as speeches or statements, the visuals alone are sufficient to outline the official nature of the visit. The lack of spoken remarks at the airport is consistent with diplomatic custom, as leaders often reserve statements for press conferences, bilateral meetings or joint media interactions. The absence of quotes in the footage means that no direct statements can be highlighted from this specific event. However, the context of the visit can be understood through recent developments in Ukraine's diplomatic outreach. Since the start of the war, Zelensky has made multiple visits to European capitals, NATO partners and international organisations to reinforce support for Ukraine's defence, secure continued assistance and maintain diplomatic pressure on Russia. Each visit has served to strengthen Ukraine's international ties, reinforce strategic partnerships and coordinate policies among allied governments. Ireland's role, although not military, has been diplomatically significant. The Irish government has consistently advocated for strong EU commitments to Ukraine and has emphasised the importance of maintaining sanctions against Russia until a peaceful and just resolution is achieved. Ireland has also contributed to humanitarian support and has worked with EU partners to coordinate aid for Ukraine's civilian population. The arrival of the Ukrainian president in Dublin reflects these ongoing commitments and the shared priorities between Kyiv and Dublin. It also offers an opportunity for both governments to discuss long-term cooperation. Ukraine continues to push for reconstruction aid, post-war planning and greater integration into European political and security frameworks. Ireland has supported Ukraine's European Union candidacy and has advocated for continued engagement between Kyiv and EU institutions. As the presidential motorcade left the airport, the official programme of the visit was set to begin. These programmes typically involve meetings with the Prime Minister, senior government officials, members of parliament and possibly representatives of the Ukrainian community in the host country. While the raw footage does not include these later events, standard diplomatic procedures suggest that the visit would include discussions on Ukraine's security needs, humanitarian priorities, reconstruction proposals, and broader European policy coordination. The visit comes at a time when Ukraine has continued to experience waves of missile and drone attacks targeting cities, infrastructure, and civilian areas. International support remains essential for Ukraine to maintain its defence capabilities, manage humanitarian needs and sustain its economy through wartime challenges. Diplomatic visits like this one contribute to maintaining the network of international support that Ukraine depends on for both immediate survival and long-term stability. Ireland's response to the war has included humanitarian funding directed toward relief organisations operating in Ukraine, as well as logistical support through EU mechanisms. Ireland has also encouraged discussions about accountability for potential war crimes, aligning with the wider European call for investigations into reported violations of international humanitarian law. For Ukraine, every diplomatic engagement with EU member states offers an opportunity to reinforce alliances, secure commitments and strengthen political support. Zelensky's visit also demonstrates Ukraine's intention to remain active on the international stage despite the ongoing challenges faced at home. The presence of Olena Zelenska emphasises Ukraine's focus on humanitarian aspects of the conflict, complementing the political and security-focused agenda typically led by the president. The footage of the arrival in Dublin provides a clear, straightforward visual account of the start of the visit. There are no public statements to analyse, no policy announcements included, and no diplomatic exchanges captured beyond the formal greeting. Instead, the imagery shows the ceremonial elements that often mark the beginning of an official state visit. These moments, though brief, carry symbolic weight, reflecting the recognition and respect afforded to the visiting head of state. While the raw footage ends with the departure from the airport, the significance of the visit extends beyond these initial images. The meetings expected to follow would likely address ongoing financial support mechanisms, humanitarian aid coordination, and Ireland's continued role in European policy discussions relevant to Ukraine. Even without recorded quotes or extended imagery, the arrival marks an important chapter in Ukraine's diplomatic outreach. This visit also contributes to Ukraine's long-term strategy of ensuring that European support remains steady and coordinated. As the conflict continues, Ukraine relies on partners like Ireland to maintain political backing within the EU framework. The relationship between the two countries has strengthened since the start of the war, and visits like this reinforce that partnership. The arrival in Dublin is part of a comprehensive approach by Ukraine to maintain visibility and engagement across Europe. Diplomacy plays a central role in Ukraine's wartime strategy, complementing military efforts and humanitarian initiatives. By continuing to meet European leaders, Zelensky ensures that Ukraine's needs remain high on the agenda of European governments. The footage of the arrival therefore serves as both documentation of protocol and a visual representation of ongoing diplomatic collaboration. Though the images show only the initial phase of the visit, they mark the beginning of discussions intended to support Ukraine during one of the most challenging periods in its modern history. As the presidential vehicle departed from Dublin Airport, the focus shifted from ceremonial reception to substantive engagement planned for the visit. These engagements are expected to involve high-level discussions that align with the priorities of both nations. The arrival of President Volodymyr Zelensky and First Lady Olena Zelenska in Ireland signifies a continued commitment to diplomatic dialogue, partnership and mutual support during a period of ongoing conflict for Ukraine. The visit reflects Ireland's ongoing solidarity with Ukraine and Ukraine's continued engagement with European partners as the war continues.